because these guys were surface warfare guys that won the contract. Well, I reached out via LinkedIn. The guy accepted my invite. So one thing led to another, and now he and I are going to meet for beers on Monday of next week. And so there's, in my mind, the real reason that LinkedIn should exist is for things like that.
Welcome to the Work Awesome podcast. This is the 9th episode. Today we are talking about getting to the 500 plus club on LinkedIn. Today I have with me Dan Nega and Sarah Aaron. Dan is our VP for Strategic Innovation, and he's actually our first vice president on the podcast, which is pretty exciting. In the future, we have plans to have Kevin, who's our CEO, on the podcast. We'll see if we can get on his schedule. And as always, Sarah is our talent resource manager. Before we get started, normally we do a icebreaker, but today, because Dan is actually pretty new to the company still, and his position is new to the company still, I just wanted to take a moment for Dan to explain exactly what strategic innovation for Avian is.
All right, Ian, thanks. Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you on the podcast. So what is the VP for Strategic Innovation? Broadly speaking, Avian asked me to come on board to assist in the growth of the company. It's a company that's well-respected, well-regarded, but fair to say in a fairly unique and niche environment of naval aviation. For the company to continue to grow, there is a whole world out there. And there are opportunities abound. And so my role is really twofold. One is to pursue other business opportunities for Avian, to include consulting in the commercial sector, other aspects of the Navy, other aspects of the DoD supply chain. Where else can Avian make an impact? So that's one big one. The second one is to manage the strategic initiatives and the various innovation ideas. Without what I'll call proper engineering and program management, ideas can flounder, or ideas can suck up resources when in fact there might not be a good idea with a sufficient return on investment. So part of my job is to find new opportunities. The other part is to manage new ideas, to make sure that those good ideas are nurtured along the way, and ideas that start as good ideas but might not end up being actual good ideas are the swift, painless death that they might deserve.
So you're doing some really exciting stuff for the company. A lot of, you say growth a lot, which is always a good word for us. And I'm excited to see where you go. We did something internally last week that, well, when this podcast comes out, it'll probably be like last month, but that was really exciting. And I posted to LinkedIn myself about that day where we had the live stream going, which was obviously a little bit different than things we normally do, because normally we have those meetings and they're in person with the dial-in option. This time we had a few people in person, but the majority of them were out in the virtual world because of the restrictions we have right now. But all very exciting stuff. So let's get into this episode. Dan, you already talked a lot about kind of like the connections with what you're doing. You're out in kind of the world. It's not really a BD position, but it is. You still have to have those connections, and you do have those connections already with a lot of folks in the community. So that ties really well into what we're talking about today, which is getting to the 500 plus club. And really, it's about making those connections on LinkedIn. So quickly, let me just talk through this description. The elusive 500 plus club is a symbol of pride, a badge of honor. In this episode, we're talking about the importance of connections on LinkedIn, as well as using those connections to better yourself and your career. So as I was doing research for this episode, I thought it would be a good idea to look at LinkedIn's mission statement, and a little background about LinkedIn. And we've actually done, 3 episodes now, Sarah, I think, about LinkedIn. And I've realized that we never actually explained what LinkedIn was. But if you are making it to this point in the podcast, hopefully you know what LinkedIn is and that you're on there using it. But their mission statement is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. So pretty straightforward there as far as the mission statement goes. Their first word is connect. That is the main purpose of LinkedIn, to make those connections with other professionals, whether it be people you know or people that you want to follow or get to know in the future. And then a little bit of background information about LinkedIn. It is the world's largest professional network with over 120 million members, growing rapidly. That number is probably inaccurate, but that's what it says right now. And then LinkedIn connects you to your trusted contacts and helps you exchange knowledge, ideas, and opportunities with a broader network of professionals. So let's start with a question first. Do you guys think there's a right or wrong way to grow your network on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I do. I like to eat, so I'm going to give you a food analogy.
Okay.
You could get to 500 and have it be cotton candy. There's nothing really there. It's just people who are fishing to get to 500. And you could grow that pretty quickly, pretty exponentially, probably in a matter of a few weeks, and get to 500. So what? It's cotton candy. When you much rather have a sizzling ribeye steak, which is, real food and real connections. And so people, I don't think, should rush to get to 500 just so they can say, oh, I got 500. And it's of limited value. But having meaningful connections is the way to go. And in that regard, it's okay to ignore connection requests. If it's simply a real estate agent from Missouri, nothing against Missouri, that is trying to connect with you, how is that going to help you? Really, how is it going to help them? So go for a sizzling steak and not a handful of cotton candy.
I'll be honest, right now I'm in the cotton candy field, mostly because I am trying to grow this podcast, so I'm connecting with a lot of people right now. But the reason I'm doing it is because I want to share all of the information we're sharing in these podcasts with people on LinkedIn and on the network. So regrettably, I am on the cotton candy side. But Sarah, what do you think?
I think Dan explained it really well. I am a little bit careful also to try not to accept too many connections that are looking to sell me recruiting products. So I do really try to look at why the request is coming through, just the same as when I'm reaching out and requesting a connection. I'd like it to be a situation that's going to be beneficial to both of us. Maybe we have a similar career path or similar connections or similar interests. So I would agree that it's probably better to stay with the steak. But I think, Ian, for your point, you have a reason to be looking to have more connections, and that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah, and Ian, I'm not sure that because of Sarah's right. Your rationale is different. I'm not sure you're cotton candy. You're kind of like cheeseburgers.
I'll take cheeseburger. That's good.
Sure. That sounds good right now.
So, okay, now let me tell you guys the way that LinkedIn actually works. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the way that I found it was described, LinkedIn is just basically another search engine. You can type anybody's name in, but the only time someone's name is going to come up is if you are a first, second, or third degree connection with that other person, which is why people do move to that cotton candy field, so that you kind of connect with a bunch of people, hoping that you then can see their first, second, third degree connections, and your name pops up more often.
Hey, Ian.
Yes.
Do you know if there are any connections beyond third? Like, I feel that if you have like 1,000 connections, that it multiplies literally exponentially, and that in 3 connections, you'll literally be connected to everybody on LinkedIn. It's kind of like that old game, 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Right.
It's really 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because you can know everybody or every movie in 3 degrees with Kevin Bacon. So I think there probably aren't very many fourth
Right.
tier.
Yeah, and that's probably why they stopped it there. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. The other thing that comes up when you search is it searches within groups that you're a part of. So if you're a part of multiple groups, it's going to search within those groups to see if people match as well. So again, just growing your network by engaging on the platform. Do you think there are, we've talked a little bit about this, but do you think there are advantages to having a large LinkedIn network? I said this on the last podcast and possibly even the podcast before, but the 500 is that mark where you get the badge that says 500 plus. It doesn't count anymore past that. But a single LinkedIn account can have up to 30,000 connections. Do you see any value in having that many connections on the platform?
I think if there's a reason to have those connections, and I think throughout your career also, the reason to connect with people can change. So maybe you're not disconnecting or, getting rid of connections along the way, but maybe your career path is changing and you're picking up different connections, or you're progressing a little bit more in your career, and that's, kind of necessitating a different type of connection. I think that can definitely change. I think that what I see is it seems like on LinkedIn, just like most social media type connections, there are people who use it frequently or not at all. So I think if you're going to use it, you're probably going to keep growing that connections. And if you've been on LinkedIn for several years, even if you're just gaining 100 connections a year that are relevant, what's wrong with that? And there are new, influencers on LinkedIn. I guess, I don't know if that's a LinkedIn term or not, that I find interesting to follow too. So I think it is good to keep it current and kind of go, okay, well now, now that I'm looking at this next step, what kind of connections would benefit me in the way of sometimes what they're posting, sometimes just, reaching out for advice. I think it's a great way to connect with people and say, hey, you know what? I'm looking to grow my career this way. What advice do you have? So I think throughout your career, if you're not stagnant, those connections and the reasons to connect are going to change. So then obviously your connections would grow.
Yeah, absolutely. The influencer thing is interesting. So on like Instagram and Twitter and possibly Facebook, I don't know if they do it or not, they put this little blue verification badge so you know that it's like the real person that you're following. So it's not like Dwayne Johnson, the guy in Oklahoma. It's The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Right.
On LinkedIn, there's these little blue boxes that have the LinkedIn logo. And that's their way of verifying that it's the real person. It's actually, I'm looking at Gary Vaynerchuk to see, because I couldn't remember exactly what it looked like, but it's actually his profile. And it just means that he is an influencer on the platform. Mm-hmm. Dan, did you have any thoughts about benefits of a large network?
Yeah, I do. I think Sarah's right, is that it's okay to have a large network, and I don't know what the number would be as to when it moves from steak to cotton candy. My number I think is over 1,000, and I've been on LinkedIn for a while, right. And I just know a lot of people because I'm old. I've been around a while. And so I think it's okay to have a big number. I don't know about 30,000 because I don't know what people would do with 30,000 other than to try and influence 30,000 people.
Right.
And I think it's okay if you're on there to have professional discussions and influencing professionally. I don't have a lot of tolerance for people that are on there espousing, political views or sharing recipes or other stuff like that. I just don't. I look back at my old boss who has a sizable following on LinkedIn, Secretary Gertz. And when COVID first hit and they shut the Pentagon down, it was the 16th of March. I remember it because I was there. He started about a week later or so posting his inspirational song of the day. He's a music guy, all sorts of music. And he thought, like many of us thought, oh, this will be over in a couple of months. No big deal. Well, here we are, 6 months later, and he still posts a song of the day from nearly every genre of music. And it's not just a song, but it's a couple of paragraphs, not the right word, a couple of verses of lyrics and the meaning behind the song and how that meaning is transferred to your professional life. And it's often stories of inclusion or thinking or asking. And so I tend to follow that and read it about every day. And every now and again, I'll chime in, as a comment to his discussion. And the benefit to him is he gets feedback and he sees that people are doing it. The benefit to me, frankly, is I keep in just a little tiny bit of contact with my old boss, who's pretty high up in the food chain for the Navy. And you never know when that relationship might come into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you guys follow Secretary Gertz or not, but I would suggest that you do, just to see his song of the day and look at it and read it. And it's usually reasonably inspirational.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. And as you were talking, I was looking, there is another option on LinkedIn to actually just follow. If you don't want to connect with somebody, but you still want to see what their posts are, you can actually just follow them instead. So you don't have to connect with them. I don't even know if it sends them a notification that you're following them, but you can still see what they're posting, get those inspirational messages without having to send that invitation to connect with somebody, which is just another valuable kind of tip for the platform if you want to get a little bit more out of it. I guess my next question would be, at what point is it okay to send that connection? Like if you're on that steak side rather than the cotton candy side, and you're waiting for the right time to send an invitation to connect with somebody, when do you guys think it's the right time to do that?
Boy, that is a hard question.
Yeah, I guess let me add a little bit more. If it wasn't all virtual, if you were in person, you were at some kind of networking event, you shook hands when there wasn't a pandemic going on, when you shook hands with this person, is it okay to then go back to your office or your phone and look them up and connect immediately? Or is it like you should wait a little while and then bring it back up in conversation or something? Or what do you guys think?
Yeah, let me offer a couple thoughts, and then I'll kick it over to Sarah because she's smarter than I am, I think, on it. So one, if I pre-COVID in the before days, if I would exchange business cards with somebody, then I would feel that that's sort of an invitation to go to LinkedIn, and so that's one. So I think that's maybe, at least for me, a cue that you can use.
Okay.
The second is, and this is hard for me to say. I have to figure out how to say it without sounding like a jerk. In my last job, I'll say it, I had a pretty nice title. Okay. Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Air Programs.
Hmm.
People wanted to connect with me because of that title. And so I had to be, I'll say, wary of that and be mindful of it without being a jerk. And it's a hard thing to balance. And that, when I first got the job, and it was sort of first announced that I was in the job, and that was in January of 18, so coming up on 3 years ago, the flurry of requests that came in was pretty substantial, and I had to sort of sort through to see who was doing it, quote, just because of the title, and who actually where there was value added, for lack of better words. Back to what Sarah said, is you have to see that there's an actual meaning or a belief. Now, it's also true that I would accept nearly every invitation from anybody who was a Navy civilian, because at some point we had, back when I was a Navy civilian, we had that connection. Just like today, I would accept every invitation to every invite that came from an Avian employee, just like I've sent out a few and asked to be part of people's networks, and they've all said yes. So I think there should be at least some foundational connection somewhere. My 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of what you said. For Sarah, though, I want to put a little bit of a spin on it. If it's an interviewee that wants to, like, you interview them and then they immediately try to connect with you on LinkedIn, obviously that's probably happened before, right? Is that, in your book, is that okay to do?
You're really putting me on the spot now, Ian, aren't you?
Hey, it's all about honesty. We're being authentic, remember?
Right. And we determined you're pretty smart, so you can handle it.
I typically accept because, we at Avian, we really have a philosophy of lifelong recruiting. So even if we have a candidate that isn't, maybe we don't have a position that's going to be a great fit for them now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to at another time, or that we won't be reaching out to them, at some other capacity. So I think we have a pretty small community here, and it is nice to be connected. I know one of the things we do, I've been fortunate to be included in the AVA discussions on recruiting and kind of transitioning from the military. And we will actually, you can open up your network if you're in a room with people, or if you're in close proximity, you can see anyone who has their network available. I don't know if either of you have ever done that.
You mean like AirDrop on your iPhone? Is that what you're, or is that
kind of like that, but it's LinkedIn. So you can see anyone who's active on LinkedIn.
Oh, really? I didn't. You taught me something today.
I'll show you how to do it sometime, Ian. I threw my phone on the floor so I wouldn't be distracted by it. Otherwise, I'd grab it and try to show you right now. But there's a way that you can do that. And when we're at those recruiting events, because we're really not recruiting them, we're talking about transitioning. We'll typically, the whole group will put their, we'll open it up, and anyone who's interested and has it open, we can connect, because we're there to be a resource. So it's a great connection. And like I said, and Dan is working on, he talked about a little bit about, kind of opening up Avian's genre of contracts that we support. So you never know what types of employees will be fortunate to be looking for in the future. And I think it's really good for me to keep open to that possibility that maybe we don't have something right now, and maybe someone isn't qualified right now. We go to college events. Typically we hire maybe a handful of interns a year, but I mean, my goodness, I'd love for them to stay in touch, and eventually, I would hope that they would either be interested in Avian, or they might be able to share, interest in Avian to someone else. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, let me share a very short story. Recently, Avian lost a competition for a reasonably sized contract up in the Pentagon, which we thought maybe we had a pretty good chance to get. And given that it was where I used to work, or close by, I was a little bit annoyed that we didn't win the contract. So I reached out via LinkedIn to one of the VPs of the company that won the contract, just to congratulate them and just open up a little dialogue with them about, hey, if there's something that you all might need some help with on this contract, we have aviation experience, we have sustainment experience, we have supply chain management experience, because these guys were surface warfare guys that won the contract. Well, I reached out via LinkedIn. The guy accepted my invite. I then sent him a note back saying, hey, I'm not just doing this randomly. And I told him exactly why I reached out to him. So one thing led to another. And now he and I and Kevin and their CEO are going to meet for beers on Monday of next week, just to talk about the two companies and how maybe we can partner to do things in the future. And so there's, in my mind, the real reason that LinkedIn should exist is for things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great real world story of how you use LinkedIn to really connect with somebody. We're getting close to 30 minutes. I realize I have a little note list that I always keep on the right side of my screen. I realized that I have something in here I should have put towards the top, but there were some statistics that I wanted to share. These past 3 episodes, we talked a lot about tips to grow your network on LinkedIn and tips to actually just use LinkedIn in general. A lot of it boils down to making sure that you're engaged on the platform, that you are posting updates regularly on there, that you are engaging with other people's updates on there. All of this is going to help you stand out on the platform. In turn, will help you stand out to your connections, which in some cases are recruiters that are looking to fill positions like Sarah. Some tips for posting, though, if you include an image on a LinkedIn post, it increases the views by a factor of 11. So by posting with an image, your view count is going to go way up. The other ones on here that are pretty interesting, 1 out of 3 professionals on the planet are on LinkedIn. So wow. All 3 of us are on LinkedIn, but if you lined up any 3 people, at least one of them are on LinkedIn. And I think it's probably even greater than that. I would probably say it's probably 1 in every 2 professionals now. Conversations per minute on LinkedIn. There are 200 conversations per minute going on LinkedIn at any given time. 41% of LinkedIn is viewed on mobile devices, which is interesting. Again, just knowing your audience. Dan, I don't know if you know this, but LinkedIn added stories. So I don't know if you're on Facebook or Instagram, but you can take like a little short 30-second video or post a picture or something, and it lasts 24 hours. LinkedIn added that function, I think last week, which is really cool. And then the final one on here, 1 in 20 LinkedIn profiles belong to recruiters. So not as many as I would expect, but definitely recruiters are on the platform like Sarah, like Megan, looking for candidates and great connections that could be made on there. So thank you guys very much for joining me today. I promised it would be about 30 minutes, and I think it is. Next week, we are moving to a slightly different topic. I don't have it pulled up right now, but I will reference it when I make the outro for this video. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see everybody next time.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ian.
Ian.
The Work Awesome podcast is brought to you by Avian. Avian is a 49% employee-owned company founded by retired U.S. Navy test pilots who believe passion and talent are the right traits to get the job done. Avian operates in a culture that thrives on innovation, creativity, and the entrepreneurial spirit. Instead of offering services through mere business transactions, Avian is redefining the government services industry by creating meaningful experiences and connecting talented people with important work. The passion that Avian's employees have for its work builds better partnerships for the future, and Avian's unique talents create real solutions. At Avian, we move fast, take risks, and don't settle for the status quo.
To learn more, visit Avian's website at avian.com. That's avian.com.